It's pretty well known what the Retroid Pocket 6 and Retroid Pocket Nova can do when it comes to retro systems, Switch, and even PC games. But what about PS3 and Xbox 360? I know these are pretty niche systems to emulate, but there are still so many great games stuck on these consoles that never made their way to newer platforms or PC. So being able to emulate them is actually a pretty big deal for many. Just 6 months ago, it was almost impossible on Retroid Pocket 6. You needed one of the most powerful flagship chips available, and even then, performance was all over the place. But things have changed quite a bit. Thanks to a series of major breakthroughs in the past few months, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in the Pocket 6 and Pocket Nova has suddenly become a much more capable 7th generation emulation machine. Before I go any further, I want to be clear that even though the state of emulation has improved and many more games are playable now than before, there are still a lot of titles that remain unplayable or require heavy tweaking to even boot properly. Performance can also vary massively from game to game, so it's definitely not an "it just works" situation yet. But still, I want to take another look at PS3 and Xbox 360 emulation on Android. I'll keep this quick and to the point so you can get a clear idea of whether it's actually worth jumping in right now and whether the current software stack is stable enough for a smooth, everyday experience on these devices. Let's start with PS3. For a long time, Android emulators struggled to get demanding 3D games running properly, but earlier this month, something interesting happened. Developers managed to bring ARM-specific improvements from the PC version of rpcsx over to Android through a new project called ARM-SX3. In simple terms, this means the emulator can make much better use of the Snapdragon chip while using less power. Games that would previously push the Retroid Pocket 6 straight into thermal throttling are now genuinely playable. We're no longer talking about just lightweight games. More demanding games can now maintain much more consistent frame rates. You will still see some shader compilation stutter when loading into a new area, and I wouldn't call this a satisfying experience yet. Still, when you compare where PS3 emulation on Android was even a month ago to where it is now, the progress is honestly pretty crazy. And then we have Xbox 360. New emulators like X360 Mobile and a X360E are heavily based on the Xenia Canary project from PC. The setup is also surprisingly simpler than PS3. The compatibility list is also growing pretty quickly, with more than 100 games currently reported as fully functional. We're talking about games like Gears of War and Asura's Wrath running on a handheld that can literally fit in your pocket. But there is one big catch with Xbox emulation, and that's RAM. These games are huge, and the emulator needs a lot of memory for texture caching and other overhead. Either way, even with these massive improvements, we're still dealing with emulators that are very much in active development. It's still in the experimental phase, but on the bright side, we're finally getting to the point where 7th generation consoles are more playable on Android. The hardware was already there, now the software is finally catching up, and in my opinion, that's the most exciting part of all of this. If the progress keeps going like this, we might not even need an Odin 3 for emulating these systems anymore. Even the Pocket 6 and Nova could handle them.